Our final speaker today is Dr. Stephen Allison, our psychiatrist from the US, and he will be speaking to us about mental health in Hanoi. Yeah. So, Dr. Stephen.
Hi, everyone. Please feel free to ask questions even as I go. I'm covering a whole range of favorite topics that come up, so we can spend more or less time on anything that's of more interest to folks here. So hi, I'm Steve Allison. I'm an American psychiatrist. I trained at the University of California, San Francisco. I was almost 30 years in the Bay Area before moving to Hanoi last year. I've been coming to Vietnam for almost 2 decades now, and I love it here, but I've only lived here for a year. And I love living in Hanoi, but it has its challenges as well, as we all know. So I wanted to talk a little bit about mental health here in Hanoi. So let's together, let me figure out which of these buttons changes it. There we go. What are some of the hard parts that come to mind for living in Hanoi? Audience participation. Traffic. Pollution. Weather. Oh, that's a good one. Here's some I came up with too. I added bureaucracy. And I run into a lot of isolation. Folks who kind of get stuck at home. What are some of the positives though? What do we like about living in Vietnam and in Hanoi? Food. I don't even think I got that one on my list. What are some other things that you like?
History. Fruits.
History, fruits.
Oh, fruits. That's good.
Yeah.
Also weather. I'm from Ireland, so this is...
There you go. I like it because I just listed a few I like. For me, I think of a sense of freedom, adventure, the beauty, the culture, sense of community. Tet Chung Tu this weekend. And does anyone know where this is? In Hanoi?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
This is in Hanoi?
Banana Island.
That's Banana Island, yeah. So it's just on the other side of Oka.
Not today, it's really today.
Yeah, yeah. It gets a little muddy out there. So what are your go-to activities that are healthy in Hanoi that don't involve alcohol?
Running.
Running.
So any
Cycling. What's yours?
cycling, pickleball, swimming.
Pickleball and swimming, I like that.
I play nerdy card games.
Nerdy card games, I like that.
Climbing.
Climbing, good.
Yeah.
Is there a climbing gym here?
Yeah,
Lots.
many
Yeah.
mountains.
Oh, very good. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, head out to Saksun and all that. You can come up with a better list than me on some of this. That's why I put a few. Exercise and sports got named. I think of community groups and friendships are important. Time in nature. Mindfulness and spiritual practices. Mindfulness doesn't always work. I know that people always mention it as like a way to relax, but sometimes we do mindfulness and it just makes us more aware that we're angry about something. But that doesn't mean it's not working. But it's good to have and various hobbies. But why did I mention without alcohol? I did want to give a special note to this because drinking is very common here. It's not always a problem. But it's often the default plan. It's especially for men. And over time, alcohol can erode our resilience, and healthy alternatives can strengthen our long-term well-being and our sense of connection. So it's good to highlight just a few. Maybe start thinking in your mind, what's one healthy activity I'd like to do more of? You can think for a moment. So before I came to Vietnam, I didn't see a lot of kids, but now I see a lot of kids. And I want to say something about that because it's usually parents bringing kids. And a lot of us are parents here. And I want to emphasize how important it is to take care of ourselves. Because if we're healthy, our kids are usually healthy. And so if we take care of our own mental health and our own well-being, it really can help our kids in so many different kinds of ways. First, it does shield our children from our own unprocessed stress and emotions. We all do it, but the more we take care of ourselves, the less we pass it on to our kids. It also, we are our kids' model for healthy habits and boundaries. It strengthens family communication. It helps kids learn to recognize and manage their own feelings. And it builds our kids' resilience and adaptability for the outside world. I really believe this, that when parents are thriving, the kids feel it and they thrive too. The most interesting thing about practicing psychiatry in Vietnam is culture. And as the only foreigner psychiatrist in northern Vietnam, I think about culture a lot. I'm not originally from Vietnam. I work with a lot of international school students, and I have patients coming from all around the world. All of us here are dealing with intersections of different cultures. So you may have heard of this term of third culture kids. So third culture kid is actually a pretty old idea. It was especially got more popular back in the 1960s, and it was actually originally developed just around immigrants and their kids, so that you might, let's say, someone moves to the United States, they have their home passport culture, that's the first culture, the host culture is the second culture, and something else is created in the coming together in the family and the school, which is the third culture. It's actually even more complicated here in Hanoi. There are different host countries in Vietnam, and the schools themselves are quite a bit different. So there's both pluses and minuses that come from this interaction of culture, and I think it's really important for us to think about. So first, I'd like to highlight something that a lot of us like for our kids. It offers a lot of opportunities, flexibility, bicultural skills, and a global identity. But it can also have some pitfalls, like identity gaps. So kids might adapt differently than their parents in the new country, which can cause friction within families. Cultural expectations matter. Different host countries might have different traditions. I find that for some of my families I work with from different neighboring Asian countries in particular that have students at international schools, the international schools kind of, well, I have a couple of UNIS students here. What culture do you feel feels like closest to the culture at UNIS? If you had to name a country.
It's like mixed, so.
Pretty mixed.
United States, maybe, and because I'm Korean, maybe Korean as well.
Yeah. Have you been to the United States? Yeah. It's kind of strange for me as an American to move here and for a school to feel like it's closer to my culture, and I'm meeting folks who go to a school there who've never been to my country. So you can have, that's kind of a fourth culture. Like, so you could be like a Japanese family living in Vietnam, and your kids are at a school that feels like they're, well, in San Francisco. And so it can get pretty complicated. And I find that this doesn't happen even just for expats. So I have a lot of Vietnamese parents who have kids at international schools, and it feels like that they're having a third culture phenomenon in their own in their home country. So I also think that there's complicated intergenerational factors here too, because with the internet and Gen Alpha, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, there is so much global culture through the internet that a lot of parents and kids may not just understand each other. So anyway, I think we could all talk about that a bit more, but this is probably the thing I spend the most of my time thinking about since I moved here. I want to talk a moment about neurodiversity. So, has everybody here, you may or may not have heard of this term before, but this is the future. It's a very important thing to learn about. There is a lot more talk at the local schools about neurodiversity. It's increasingly used language, and it's an empowerment movement. So something to say about neurodiversity it's something I think that Eunice talks about quite a bit about, probably has activities on it and the like. Historically, psychiatry has been a world where we have this big book of diagnoses, and it's all about finding disorders and things that are wrong, and they're all end in disorder. This is something different. So terms you've probably heard about before: attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, autism spectrum disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and many other things we've heard about are kind of being reframed at this time. There's a new idea about neurotypes, and that there's more recognition that we're all not wired the same. I sometimes use the example that, well, how many left-handed folks do we have here? Do we have any left-handed folks here? No? Okay. Has anybody here ever tried to use left-handed scissors? If you try and use left-handed scissors, it's really hard. So there are different ways that our brains are wired, and at my school we had left-handed scissors and we had left-handed desks for left-handed people. That was something to be recognized. In prior generations, it was considered not okay to be left-handed. I had an art teacher who was he was forced to use his right hand. And yeah, and in Latin, left is evil. The root is, yes.
When I was a kid, I was double-handed.
Yeah.
And I was forced to only write with my right hand.
There you go.
Still, the things that I've learned actively, like writing, I do with my right hand.
Yeah.
Things that I've just done by myself, like I pick up a hockey stick, I do it like a left-handed. Because no one has taught me to do it with the right hand. So it's really, really strange sometimes.
Yeah.
That's like a superpower that was denied as well.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
So we can talk about this more, if you like, but I think of ADHD and autism in a similar kind of way. There is severe autism, which can be linked, for example, with speech delay and behavioral problems and needing a lot of support and extra interventions. But there is also milder, almost personality traits that do perfectly fine in the world. It's a little bit more like being left-handed. Like, so maybe interpersonal relationships and minds, understanding social things around other people might be a little bit of a mystery, but might be really good at something else. It's actually really common, and I'm sure that we all have friends, colleagues, maybe even family members who are on the autistic spectrum or have ADHD or many of these things. But it's not something that's as obvious as which hand you're writing with. So I point this out because there's a lot of taboo around seeing psychiatrists around the world. It's getting a little bit better in the United States. It's getting better here. But a lot of this is about recognizing, essentially, if somebody's left-handed and getting them left-handed scissors. It's not about taboo or a problem, but the world was built for neurotypical people. It was built for straight white men, frankly, and this is about making space for people with different abilities and different ways in recognizing them. So I don't think of neurodiversity as having deficits. This is more about recognizing and supporting students, and then when you do that, people thrive. So there are barriers here in Hanoi in particular that it's not easy to get evaluations. It can be quite expensive to get huge batteries of psychological testing, but there are more resources. I do help coach families through this. Medications for ADHD can help with focus and attention in school if that's a priority, but they run out. So there's shortages all the time. So sometimes we have it, sometimes we don't. And of course, the taboos, the stigma, and narrow definitions of success really do make it harder. So anyway, it's something I think of. I've been thinking about this a lot in Vietnam. And then people ask me about screen time all the time. So just a few words on this. Screens aren't always bad. We live abroad. We're here in Hanoi. It keeps us connected with friends and family abroad. It can be a great source of learning, creativity, and exploration. But if we're using them late at night, it can interfere with sleep. It becomes a problem if we're noticing social withdrawal, compulsive use, conflict, family conflict over when screen time is and when it ends. So just a few practical strategies. You might have some of your own that you might want to share, but some common recommendations might be having daily scheduled non-screen time for the family, like time that you all go out together or time that everyone reads an actual book. No phone zones in the home, maybe the dining room, maybe the bedrooms. It can be helpful to have like a family charging station at night that everyone uses, and that's where all the devices go at a certain time. Our kids follow us, so if we're on our screens all of the time, then what are we asking our kids to not be on screens? They follow our lead. The schools are actually pretty good at setting language and culture around this, and if we look at what they're using and use that same language at home, it can be pretty helpful. There are, of course, the limits on apps, and I find that it can be very helpful with transitions to plan for them in advance. We've talked about them maybe not right while screen time is going on, not right at the time of a transition, but that we know how long it's going to be. And so it's easier to have these conversations when it's cool and calm, not when it's hot in an emergency and you need to get out the door. So anyway, some practical takeaways from today. I'm a psychiatrist. I am a physician who can prescribe medications. I am also trained in psychotherapy. But I'm not the only resource. Psychotherapy or counseling, as many know, can be very helpful. I usually recommend it once a week. It can be helpful almost just like life coaching. And there are some really good foreign-trained psychotherapists here in Hanoi. I think if we notice that stress is starting to interfere with our sleep, our work, our relationships, and especially safety, that's a good time to seek out help. A little takeaway, if you're worried about your kids, always think first about what support you need yourself as well. It's okay to come see a therapist or a psychiatrist just to help make sense of things, almost like a parent coach. So these are some institutions that I've met and here in Vietnam that I work with and share. I can highly recommend Senia Vietnam is kind of an umbrella group that knows about a lot of different resources. They have a website, so all of these various groups connect kind of through Senia. And Therapy is a psychotherapy provider that Crosspoint. These are both groups. There's a few neurodiversity resources here. Forward Steps is new in Tây Ho and is offering more comprehensive evaluations around autism. This is also, and there's Imago Work is actually a pretty cool place too. I recommend checking out their website because they're providing more work opportunities for those who are differently abled.
They have an amazing coffee shop.
Yeah. Yeah, and there is AA in Hanoi. It's here, it's everywhere in the world. And one of the amazing things about AA is it's free. I would like to end, earlier we did a healthy activity little thing. I would like you each to think of one thing that you would like to do more of, and then tell somebody else here that thing, if you can. You can choose something, because research shows that if you tell somebody else what you're going to do, you're much more likely to do it. So there you go. All right, I'm going to think of mine. I'm going to go to yoga more. Okay, now you have to tell, I'm going to go this week. I'm going to go to a yoga class. So then you can think of something. You find a partner near you, and you can tell them. Pair off. You can think of, introduce. All right, now you've made a commitment. All right, thank you so much. Let's all talk. Yeah, all right.
Thank you so much, Dr. Allison. I'm sure I was taking notes, I have questions. I'm sure there's going to be questions for Dr. Allison. Would anybody like to begin? Yes?
As a third culture kid, I was wondering if there's any strategy that I can mitigate like anxiety in terms of being in a social group, because I don't belong specifically towards any cultures. Because I'm Korean, I grew up in Vietnam for 8 years, and I am in international school, so I'm also very close with the culture from the United States and abroad. So, and I feel like I always lack the sense of inclusion, and I feel like that's a little bit better in UNIS because there's a lot of third culture kids. But when I go outside, like when I go to university, I'm afraid that I won't be able to be included in some kind of social group, and even though I am, I'm afraid I won't be like happy as usual. So I was wondering if that's the concern that I need to take in my life journey, or if there's any strategy that I can mitigate that.
That is a great question. And I think it would be the kind of thing that I might explore over weeks to months in a way, because it's kind of an ongoing conversation. We're talking about building identity. And it's not easy being a teenager, just any country. And we're all forming our identities as we grow up. And it's a specifically important transition time as you're kind of looking at that natural breaking away from family that happens around your age. Adolescence is a kind of way of creating an identity separate from your family of origin, but family matters. And so you're mentioning Korea, and like, so you have certain values around family, but then you're at American school, and then international school with American values that are like, oh, well, it's very common to like go away to university and the like. So it's kind of a setup. I'm curious, like, do they talk about this much at school?
No, but we do talk about inclusions and diversity. So we respect what we have,
yeah,
but we don't really talk about the strategy to mitigate those stress or any sense of
and you kind of need like a specific fit, right? Like it's different for different kids from different countries, right?
Include that, and we are respecting those. And I know that there are some conversation with counselor to mitigate those concerns, but like officially, there's not much strategy going on.
Yeah. So this is a place where I think I'd highlight what I like about. I will say something about psychotherapy. I want to put in a real pitch for it. You don't have to have problems to go to psychotherapy. Psychotherapy, pretty much any really good psychotherapist or psychiatrist, in my opinion, went and got psychotherapy themselves. It's a kind of way of making sense of your own self with somebody else's mind. So it's a little bit like having like a cool younger aunt or uncle who kind of just gets you, and you could talk to them about stuff that you maybe wouldn't be able to talk to your parents about. So it matters that you feel like somebody gets you. And if you're growing up in a way and your parents have a different culture, you kind of have to sort of assemble a way, you're almost like mentors or coaches. It's a little bit like having another mind other than your parents' mind to kind of help figure out who you are. So our teachers do that a little bit for us, but I think, and maybe even like school counselors sometimes if you're meeting with them individually might be helpful, but I'm curious who to the extent, maybe it's not informal psychotherapy, they're like, are there kinds of people that come to mind who have actually, you don't have to tell me or not, but are the people who have actually played kind of that role for you in some way?
Yeah.
They do come to mind?
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah. Keep looking for people like that. That's my advice.
Talking. Always talk.
I used to be an inpatient psychiatrist, so I know a lot about psychiatric medications. I used them to treat severe psychosis, mania, severe depression, but they're not my go-to. I'm kind of, for an acute care psychiatrist, I'm kind of a medication skeptic at some level. I know what they can do, I know what they don't do. Oftentimes, if it's possible, I usually, for a lot of things that are more in the psychology realm and less in the psychopathology realm, I almost always start with counseling. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Regarding ADHD,
Yes.
could you recommend some book mother should read to help them effectively?
I'm trying to think of a good book off the top of my head. I will not claim to be an ADHD expert. I'm doing more of it here because a lot of people are coming to me for that. I think do you have any specific questions about ADHD? Do you have any specific questions about ADHD that you're wondering about? Because it's a very interesting topic, ADHD.
Because my daughter
Yeah.
have had ADHD treatment,
Yeah.
so I want to support her more.
So that's great. That's actually really helpful. So ADHD, I have a lot of people come to me asking if they have ADHD. There's a lot of things on like Facebook and Instagram that's like, maybe you have ADHD and all of this kind of thing. And actually a lot of people do. It's actually really common. And it's very helpful to treat ADHD. One thing I always do is, and this is just not necessarily specific for your daughter, but in general, I always do a full evaluation because I'm always trying to figure out what parts are ADHD and what's something else. If we go back on that neurodiversity slide, if I can go back here. One thing that's super interesting is that someone who has ADHD also often has anxiety, depression. It's possible also to have OCD. These things, they often go together. And just because somebody has multiple ones of it doesn't necessarily mean that they have more problems but these tend to be like fly together. So it's really common, for example, I might have somebody who had ADHD, but then I also figure out, oh, there's a little bit of OCD there. Oh, they have a little bit of autistic traits, or that's playing in, or substance use, and it plays in. So I think kind of in a big picture, and sometimes it's actually, that might be a real thing, but the bigger problem sometimes, I think, is this. And it's actually cultural conflict and issues that are coming up that are actually even a bigger contribution to the crisis, maybe, that's actually bringing somebody to see me. So I like to think of kind of a global understanding of everything. And with ADHD, I try to be pretty focused on the issues that are coming up at school around focus and concentration. So I have a series of inventories and such that I do. And we only have one medication in Vietnam for treating it, which is methylphenidate. So Concerta or Ritalin, which are basically the same medicine in a long-acting form. So it's either, do you use a medication or not here? So that's just a little extra on ADHD. There you go. Other questions?
I have a question
Yes.
about this idea of the TCK, the third culture kids. This fascinates me in terms of there's a homogenization of culture that's happening in art and music, and like K-pop has influenced American music, but American music was what influenced K-pop at the start, you know, that everything is sort of becoming the same. So like if you're a teenager in America, you're listening to the same music as a teenager in Japan. Like how much does the homogenization of world culture contribute to this lack of identity as well? Like there's no identity for anyone anywhere. Therefore, how can you have an identity when you're not in your home country anyway?
What do you all think? Let's hear from does that speak to you?
Yeah, because I do listen to pop music from the US, also K-pop. For me, it was kind of usual because I'm a third culture kid, and I think I have the identity of like mixed culture, so that's pretty normal to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I
No
wonder
strangeness.
which came first.
Korean came first, but then at the age of 8, I started listening to Justin Bieber, and then suddenly I started listening to Korean K-pop music that is influenced by like all the Hollywood actors and all the pop music. So
Yeah.
it's not strange at me. It's
Which
strange to
I
me
think
at all.
could be the experience of a kid in London or San Francisco or Tokyo, right? As well. That's it's an interesting thing to me in terms of how much does that influence the lack of identity that people have.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the sense or feeling of identity and then shared culture too. Like it's kind of interesting that like we might meet and I somehow seem familiar, right? Like I do have a sense like, oh yeah, you could have been somebody I met in San Francisco. That is kind of, it's in some ways that's not all bad too, in a way. Like, oh, that's kind of interesting. The shared connections that we have that before. Anyway, I don't claim to be an expert on this either, by the way. I'm actually like, we're all in this together. This really is a conversation.
Yeah.
I'm curious what other people think.
I am actually a third culture kid.
Yeah.
As you could see, I grew up in 3 countries, and it was I think a lot of parents have not gone through this because people in their 40s did not have this kind of opportunity that the kids this age have, the kids these times have. So when I had to go back to Japan after being in Hong Kong and United States, I had an identity crisis, as you can expect. But there was no counseling. It's Asia. You don't go to a psychiatrist unless you're crazy.
Right.
And it was a culture there. But in a way, I think it was easier because I could say I'm different. Like you don't expect the same things that you expect from other people because I am different. And I abused that as an excuse not be able to do a lot of things. And that was, I think, in a way easier than what the kids these days age have to go through because the information is so much there now that it's like, that's not an excuse. Like you had access to this information. I don't know where you're from, but everybody, you should know this music. You should know this culture. You should know this movie because you have access to it. And I think they are expected to fit more in smoothly in a culture where I was like, okay, I don't know, teach me. You have to tell me. So although I am a third culture kid, raising third culture kid, I think even going through the experience of being a third culture kid is not helpful to be to raise kids. It's so different. So it's not like, oh, I haven't gone through this, so I'm having problems raising kids in this culture. I think it's just so difficult for parents in general to be abroad, and the kids are exposed to so many different things. Yeah, so I think counseling is very important for everyone now, regardless of what the background is.
And I wonder about, I'm thinking of parents here too, with regards to culture and preserving culture. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm an American parent here, and my wife's Vietnamese American, and so I'm kind of like loving this in a way. It's not much of a culture. I've got Vietnamese culture and a kind of an American culture from my kids' school. There's not much work on my part for having to preserve culture. But that's not the same for every family here. Like if you're a Korean or Japanese family and you want to preserve Japanese culture here, that's an extra task. I know that there's language groups at schools and different schools have more than others, but I'm kind of curious what people here think about that and the efforts to preserve culture in the face of a homogenizing culture.
Yeah, it's really important. That's essentially what I'm trying to get at as well.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, the difference between Gen Z and millennials, and like that's already a thing. But the advent of the internet, you're the first generation that were born and the internet existed, right? Which is wild. I remember the internet becoming a thing. I remember the dial-up in my house. I remember all of those things. Whereas you guys were just born into it. It existed. So there's that on top of everything else. It's really, really amazing. I just want to say fair play to all of the parents. I am not one, and I can't imagine going through this stuff with kids. It's amazing. So yeah, but it's a fascinating topic.
I thought about this because we've been living abroad for 10 years, maybe even longer if you look longer perspective, almost 15 years. But when you when you move away from your country and you scale off the culture that is in that country, and you're not exposing your kids to that anymore, you're left with what? You're left with some traditions, you're left with some food, you're left with the language. And our kids have never lived in Sweden. Our daughter, she was like 3 years old, she barely remembers Sweden. And our son was barely 8 months when we left. So to them, Sweden doesn't have the same bearing as this this parents' culture. Because the culture that we bring to them, it's basically the Christmas food, it's the language, it's the Christmas tree, it's things we do at the birthdays, and it stops there. We go back to Sweden during summers and they visit their friends, we are in the summer house, they love it, and then it's back home again. So they always had home somewhere else than Sweden. And I think of, at least my kids, the third culture kid in the middle, they have less of that, like this pink square, I think. The parents' culture is less dominant for my kids who've never been citizens of Sweden other than on paper. They have the host cultures, they have a mix of other cultures, and then they have us. Okay, we are good, we're important players in their lives, but we are not these big culture moguls who will instate the Swedish culture into them. We're just the parents. So our kids are more second culture kids than third culture kids. Yeah.
Could it be argued though that you are home to them?
Yeah.
So wherever you are, that's home, right?
Yeah.
So
I
you are
think,
their culture.
Looking at when we moved to Hanoi and the kind of transition that the kids did to get into school and stuff, and looking at other kids coming now straight from their countries, that transition is a lot harder if you are like my daughter was, she was 11 and my son was 9. They come in and they're like, okay, so this is it. It's a new international school, new country, parents are here, fine, this is home. And after a month, they were well integrated into the school. Now you have, if you move from another country, well, first off, you have the language. Maybe you don't speak English good enough to feel comfortable in an international school. Mm-hmm. Secondly, you've never you never experienced this before. I need to get a whole new group of friends. I need to find friendship. I need to understand the different dynamics and everything. My kids grew up in international schools, so they're used to the fact that 20-30% are on a regular basis just going back home again, and we have 20-30% new kids coming in. But that also gives them a bit of lack of what is home, what am I? Our kids are super, super patriotic. As soon as there's a Swedish game, they are wearing their Swedish shirts and their Swedish everything, their Swedish kit, but they don't know what it's like being Swedish. Just a small reflection.
No, that's fantastic, because I support Arsenal I am not from London. Like, it's an interesting comparison. Like, yeah.
I think this comes up for me clinically a lot, and I think this is why, I ended on, one of the most important things I think in psychiatry is that we're not all the same. We face similar situations, but we all have our unique story, and that individual story is, in a part, when we talk about something like psychotherapy, that's what we're in some ways having a conversation about and understanding that story better together. This idea, too, of culture comes up in so many different ways. Like, I'll give you some examples that, for example, I see almost as many Vietnamese patients as foreigners. Plenty of Vietnamese patients speak English perfectly fine, especially international school kids. So I mentioned that that's already a bit of a third culture phenomenon for local Hanoians. I find that a lot of adults who spent time abroad, so if Vietnamese people who lived maybe in Australia for their master's degree and then are back, I think it can feel like a bit of an awkward fit when you join the global culture in a way. So I have a number, like, it was interesting because I see a lot of international school kids here during the school year. Then everybody gets on their planes and goes to their home countries for the summer. But this summer, I actually had a bunch of Vietnamese students from abroad who are either high school, boarding school students or university students in the UK or Australia who are struggling to figure out where they fit in Hanoi, but also abroad. And so, same city, so many different stories.
Absolutely. I'm aware of the time as well, because we could genuinely, I think we'll do the next one will just be you. This is a conversation that will go on and on, right? And it's an incredible conversation to have. Thank you to all of you for being so forthcoming and honest about your experiences. We are all living in Hanoi as guests, but as accepted guests, as part of this amazing place. I think it's a really nice way to finish this, actually, by saying thank you to everybody who is involved, but also you mentioned doing nice things for yourself. This is the most beautiful street in Hanoi. This is Phan Dinh Phun. Just walk down that street and you will be happy. Yeah. It's incredible. So thank you to everybody for taking part in today's discussions and talks and presentations. I hope to see you at the next one. Thank you very much.